Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is a magic school. And as you would expect, like any school, there are classes. Today we'll be looking at every class taught at Hogwarts, every teacher that has taught that class, and what is taught in each year. But keep in mind, we're only going to be talking about the things that were covered in the 7 books, the 8 films, as well as the games. Pretty much whatever was taught during Harry's time there in each continuity. We will not be covering anything from Hogwarts Mystery or Hogwarts Legacy because, well, Harry wasn't there during that time. That being said, let's get straight into the video. Transfiguration. Transfiguration was taught by Professor McGonagall during Harry's time at Hogwarts. Transfiguration is pretty much transforming one item or object or living thing into something else entirely. During first year, Transfiguration is the first class a student takes. In it, they'll learn a number of transfiguration spells like turning a matchstick into a needle, a desk into a pig, and in some cases they may even learn to turn a mouse into a snuffle box. In the films, we can also see that students may also learn the Transfiguration alphabet as well in their first year. During second year, students learn a couple interesting forms of Transfiguration. Some of these are variations of what they learn in the first year, such as turning a beetle into a button or rabbit into slippers. They may also learn the spell Vira Verto, which is seen in the film version of the Chamber of Secrets, which is transfiguring an animal into a goblet. In the game, students can also learn a basic transfiguration spell, which can be used on training robots to transfigure them into mice or frogs for a simple class. This can be taken in either a student's second, third, or fourth year. Obviously, this class is entirely optional and students do not have to participate in it. Third year is where things get a little bit more exciting for Transfiguration. Well, obviously there's a new form of Transfiguration similar to the previous years, which includes turning a teapot into a tortoise. But then there's also a lesson on Animagi, which is a person that can transform into an animal at will. Not only do they teach you about Animagi, how to become one, as well as the requirements like registering with the Ministry. If you don't register within the Ministry once you become an Animagus, you can get sent to Azkaban. That's a little fun fact for you. Anyway, McGonagall, who is an Animagus, a cat Animagus, also gives a demonstration of herself taking the form of a cat. We never really saw this class in the film, instead it was merged with Snape's werewolf class. In the game, there isn't really any new ones, however the Transfiguration class from the second year can also be taken in the third year if you choose. Like the first 3 years, you'll also learn turning animals into objects or objects into animals during your fourth year, such as turning a hedgehog into a pincushion, or turning a guinea fowl into a guinea pig. However, there are some new interesting things that are taught during fourth year for Transfiguration. First off, there's the switching spell. What this does is it will switch the place of one object with another. So like say here I've got this Lego minifigure of Nearly Headless Nick and this one here of Hermione Granger. So what this will do is it will basically just swap the locations of them. Then there's the cross-species switch. What this does is it can basically take some traits of an animal and give them the traits of another. So say for example, it can probably give a bird pig traits, if that makes sense. And then there's the transforming spell. It's unclear what this spell does. I would assume it's probably a more advanced form of basic transfiguration. Either way, it was not really made clear in the book. During 5th year, more advanced transfiguration spells are learned. For example, 5th year also teaches partial vanishment, which basically is a variation of the vanishing spell, which I'll be mentioning later. We didn't really get much coverage of it in the book. It's assumed it only just causes something to partially vanish. The vanishing spell actually causes something to completely disappear. Students also learn the outer opera glass spell, which obviously hence its name, can transfigure an owl into a pair of opera glasses. But perhaps the most powerful thing you learn in your 5th year is Inanimus Conjurus. What this does is it literally changes the whole layout of a room. Obviously, students don't actually get to demonstrate it, given how it basically affects the whole room. It would basically change up the whole Transfiguration classroom. But then again, it begs the question, why hasn't anyone used this at any point? Like, given how powerful it is, it can literally change the design of any room. So obviously, students don't actually get to demonstrate it, they obviously just have to write an essay on it, given its overly powerful nature. 6th year is where things start to get even more interesting for Transfiguration. In the book canon, this is actually where students first learn non-verbal spells, which is the ability to cast a spell without muttering its incantation. Obviously, in the film canon as well as in the games, this is not really the case, because in the film canon, some students were seen using non-verbal spells even before their 6th year, and in the game, students consistently use non-verbal spells. Everyone does. Mostly due to the fact that the games have no dialogue. In the 6th year, students may also learn human transfiguration, which is actually transfiguring a person into an object, which is a very powerful form of transfiguration. Although in the game, you kind of learn the basic transfiguration spell, which actually already has that effect on humans. So you pretty much would learn that in your 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year going by the games. During Transfiguration in your 6th year, you may also learn Avis, the bird conjuring charm, and you can also learn to conjure other types of animals, creatures, or pretty much anything during your 6th year. Potions. Potions was taught by Professor Snape during Harry's first 5 years at Hogwarts, and then later by Professor Slughorn. Snape was notable for being very strict and a very no-nonsense type teacher. However, Professor Slughorn was a lot more easygoing and a little bit more positive than Snape. 3 different potions are taught for first years during potions class. The first one was the cure for boils. The cure for boils can be used to cure pimples, most notably those that were caused by the pimple jinx. Pink smoke will rise from the cauldron if the potion is brewed successfully. In the books, we also see another potion taught during first year, and that is the forgetfulness potion. This potion isn't really anywhere near as good to drink, because it can cause partial memory loss to whoever drinks it. And then thirdly, in the games, you also learn how to make the strength potion, which, if drinking, it will temporarily amplify the strength of the drinker, almost making them as strong as Hagrid for a period of time. Well, obviously the potion is useful for pulling levers that you wouldn't normally be able to pull. During 2nd year, students learn how to make the hair-raising potion. This potion causes the drinker's hair to stick up. Also in 2nd year in the books, students also learn how to make the swelling potion. And this potion is a potion that causes whoever drinks it or whoever touches it to swell in size. It's made from pretty powerful chemicals. More specifically, bat spleens, dry nettles, and pufferfish eyes. During 3rd year, you learn about quite a few different types of potions. There's the undetectable poison. Well, it appears to be a type of poison that's undetectable by anything. And then you have the shrinking solution. Now this potion can shrink the size of whatever drinks it, but according to Snape, if you get the ingredients wrong, it can kill you. Then there's the confusing connotation, another type of potion that is intended to confuse the drinker or anything that breathes it. In the game, during your 3rd year, you also learn how to make the invisibility potion, which makes the drinker temporarily invisible. It's especially useful for if you need to sneak past Filch. During your 4th year, you learn how to make several different potions, new ones especially. Well, first of all, there's the wit sharpening potion, which is intended to increase the intelligence of the drinker temporarily. Although Snape does advise on drinking against it. There's also Antidote, which can serve as a cure for a number of different ailments. In the film, we can also see ingredients for the famous French method for the bite of a mad dog. Whatever that means. In the game, although it's not really practical because it's not really an official lesson, you come down here later to sneaking in with Fred and George to learn how to make the aging potion, which increases the age of the drinker. In the books, this aging potion cannot be used to trick age lines. However, in the films and the games, it can. However, given that we're not learning this in an official class, it's very likely you do not learn the aging potion until like your 7th year. In the 5th year, students learn how to make some pretty advanced potions, but very rewarding ones once they're made. First of all, they learn how to make the Drought of Peace, which is a potion that can relieve anxiety or agitation, which can be very useful for people like Ron, for instance.
What bloody hell was that all about?
The Invigoration Drought is another potion that students learn how to brew in their 5th year. It can boost the drinker's energy. Honestly, sometimes I think I may need this potion. In the 5th year, students also learn how to make the Strengthening Solution, which temporarily boosts the strength of the drinker. It's possibly the same as the Strength Potion, which was learned in 1st year in the games. But then again, I mean, the Strength Potion was orange, whereas this is blue. So, very small difference, but they probably have the same effect, but different ingredients. In 5th year, students also learn how to make the Polyjuice Potion, which allows you to temporarily take the form of another person. Although, Hermione actually learned how to make this much earlier in her 2nd year, so yeah, but remember, Polyjuice Potion is only for human transformations. If you use it to turn into an animal or another creature or beast or anything like that, it could come with disastrous results. In the game, you also learn how to make this in your 2nd year, however it's not during a class. And for aesthetic effect, it's also what's used to switch between characters. Although technically the Polyjuice Potion is only for aesthetic effect, you're not actually changing into that character, you're switching to that character in the game. During the 6th year, students will learn how to make a number of different potions. Some are dangerous, but others can grant you great benefits. First of all, there's Amortentia. It's a type of love potion which can cause the drinker to feel an obsessive love for whoever gave them the love potion. It's a wonder how these are legal because, yeah, you can basically cause someone to fall in love with you against their will. Veritaserum is another potion you learn about during your 6th year at Hogwarts. Students may also learn how to make the Drought of the Living Death, which is a very dangerous potion that can send the drinker into a death-like state. It's definitely not something you'd want to drink, but it's nice to experiment with. With the help of the Half-Blood Prince's book, Harry managed to successfully make this potion perfectly, and Slughorn awarded him with Liquid Luck, or Felix Felicis. And just like in your 5th year, you may also learn about Polyjuice Potion in your 6th year, which I also covered in the 5th year, so we already know its effects. It temporarily changes a person into someone else for that period of time. You will need a couple complicated ingredients, including that person's hair, or a toenail, or pretty much any part of that person, but mostly hair. The Garnished Pink Blended Poison is also presented to 6th years in Potions class, mostly to give students the chance to make an adequate antidote to said poison. Students would also take notes on the Everlasting Exors, which is a type of potion with the effect to either never run out of potion or to even work forever. It's a pretty advanced potion that students mostly take notes on for their 6th year. Herbology. Herbology is taught by none other than Professor Sprout. During Herbology, students will learn about different kinds of plants and how to handle them. For 1st years, we never actually see a Herbology class in either the books or the films. However, in the games, there actually is a Herbology class for 1st years. During that class, we learn about Devil's Snare and how to get rid of it. During the class, you also learn how to use Lumos Solem, which is the only way to get rid of a Devil's Snare. The Devil's Snare is a very dangerous plant that can strangle anyone that comes near it. When you're constricted by Devil's Snare, the thing you gotta do is relax. or just let someone save you with Lumos Solem. Well, Ron didn't really take this too well, and, well, we all know what happened with him. He had to be saved. Twice if you count the games. During second year of Herbology, students will learn about mandrakes. Mandrakes or mandragora are magical sentient plants. Their cries can be very fatal. Well, only if they're adults. If they're seedlings, the cry will merely just knock you out for several hours. But if they're an adult, you better be careful because they can kill you. Additionally, mandrakes can actually be used to return those that have been petrified to their original state. Students learn how to pull them out of their pots, and you must wear earmuffs while doing it. In the games, students aren't necessarily knocked out when coming near a mandrake, they merely just slow down and cover their ears, which does hinder your jumping. So be sure to have your earmuffs on when handling a mandrake. During third year, students learn about pufferpods, which is a magical plant that produces large pink seed pods which have shining beams whenever they come into contact with a solid object. However, you got to be careful not to drop them, because if you do, they spew small flowers everywhere. During fourth year, students will learn about bouncing bulbs, which is a type of plant that tends to hop around everywhere. What you got to do is you got to pick them up very carefully and put them back in their pots before they can, well, escape the greenhouse. During fifth year, students will learn about a couple different plants. One of them is the Screech Snap. It's a magical plant that, well, can move and make noise. It can also bite you if you're not careful. And they can also feel both pain and joy in pretty much anything a human can feel. Students are also given an essay to write about self-fertilizing shrubs in the fifth year. Well, given their name, it appears they have the ability to produce their own fertilizer. During the sixth year, students learn about a little bit more of a dangerous type of plant, the Snargaluff. It's a little bit more dangerous than a mandrake or devil's snare. These plants have hidden thorn-covered vines. They have the appearance of a stump, but when provoked, they attack. And it's usually best if they're handled with more than one person. Teamwork goes a long way, especially in situations like this. Charms. During Harry's time at Hogwarts, Charms is taught by Professor Flitwick, a very short professor who's part goblin and stands on a stack of books to teach the class, so the whole class can see him as he teaches. Two spells of notability are learned during this class. First of all, there's Wingardium Leviosa, which is the levitation charm which allows the caster to levitate items and objects into the air. Students practice on feathers. Unfortunately, Ron didn't have to get it on his first time. Hermione had to remind him, it's Leviosa, not Leviosar.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
In the game, Ron actually is kind of successful at it, but instead, without control, he lifts up 3 other students, requiring you to rescue all 3 of them. Also in the game, you also learn 2 other spells and charms as well. You also learn Lumos, which is the spell that emits a light from your wand, allowing you to light up dark areas. And then there's Nox, which turns off the light from your wand. We don't really see any charms lessons get taught in the second year for the books, the films, or the games. However, Standard Book of Spells has a number of spells for second years, and Arresto Momentum is actually taught in the DS version of the game. Arresto Momentum is the slowing charm which can save someone's life, especially if they're falling from a great height. Dumbledore once used it on Harry wandless while he was falling from his Dementor attack during his third year Quidditch. During third year, students will learn about cheering charms. The cheering charm is basically a charm that can cause joy and laughter to the target. Students will either form pairs or trios to practice the charm on each other. Although not proven, it could also counteract the effects of a Dementor attack. We never really actually see the cheering charm be used anywhere else. During 4th year, students will learn the summoning charm and the banishing charm, Accio and Depulso respectively. Accio can be used to pull items directly to you, so you can basically grab the item and have it fly to you without having to get up and actually grab it. It's a very useful and very powerful spell, especially if something's too far away from you. Then there's Depulso, which is used to push items away from you. You can move one item to another location with this spell. In the game, the summoning charm Accio can actually be purchased from the shop for a high number of studs, and it acts as an upgrade to Wingardium Leviosa. So you don't actually learn the spell in the traditional sense, you actually have to purchase it. During 5th year, students learn a number of spells during charms. One of these spells is the Growth Charm. It's similar to Engorgio, and it actually allows the caster to increase the size of the target. The next spell that's learned, well, is the Substantive Charm. It's mentioned in the Order of the Phoenix book, however, its effect is never clearly mentioned. And then there's the Color Change Charm, Color Varia. This can be used to basically change the color of a target. Say, for example, I have this boat here, right? You can cast Color Varia on it, and boom! The boat will probably turn orange or something. 5th years also learn another spell and charms in the games that wasn't really shown in the books and the films. It was Diffindo, the Severing Charm. Students practice this charm on red walls, which they can carve shapes into to practice the charm. During 6th year, more advanced variations of charms are learned. One of them is the Vinegar to Wine spell. Obviously, hence its name, it can be used to turn vinegar into wine. Non-verbal spells are also learned during charms in 6th year. Obviously, these allow you to cast a spell without muttering the incantation, just like I explained earlier with Transfiguration. However, it's very likely in the film canon as well as in the games that this is actually not the case, because we see students actually doing non-verbal spells in the films before their 6th year. In the games, this is obviously not the case because non-verbal spells are a common thing due to the fact that the games have no dialogue. Students may also learn the water-making spell in charms, Aguamenti, which allows you to spray fresh drinkable water at a target. It can also be used to put out fires and also provide drinks. While it isn't shown in the books and the films, students also learn Reducto in the games during their 6th year. Reducto is a very powerful blasting spell which allows one to destroy objects that are normally unbreakable. Defense Against the Dark Arts is a very notable class at Hogwarts. It's where students learn how to use powerful spells to defend themselves from dark forces. Dark creatures are also discussed in Defense Against the Dark Arts to prepare students for them in order to learn everything they need to know about said creatures when they come face to face with them. Due to a Jing's vulnerable place in the Defense Against the Dark Arts position when Dumbledore denied him the position many years ago, every single teacher that's had the position has been unable to hold it for a year. Hence, Harry has had a number of different Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers during his time at Hogwarts. We'll be covering each teacher with every single year, starting off with his first year where he was taught by Professor Quirrell. Professor Quirrell was notable for, well, having a stutter. And he also wore his purple turban, which was hiding a relatively dark secret at the back of his head. During Defense Against the Dark Arts in the first year, students learned about vampires and hags. Well, obviously, vampires are a being that can suck the blood out of someone. And hags, well, they are pretty shady. Obviously, we only see one of these classes in the books. Defense Against the Dark Arts for first years is not shown in either the films or the games. During second year, Harry was taught by none other than Gilderoy Lockhart, a celebrity author who has a charming smile, bright golden hair, and let's just say he's a little bit more of a storyteller than a practical teacher. But either way, everyone's got an opinion on this teacher. people either love him, they hate him, or they're somewhere in between, like our good friend Harry. Or if you're like me, you love him, because he's funny, and he's a far cry away from the strict teachers like McGonagall and Snape. Anyway, his books say he's mastered over 100 spells. He also covers banshees, ghouls, hags, and trolls. Pretty much everything he's covered in his books. However, his spell work, especially in the books, is a far cry from how good he claims to be. He was unable to stop the pixies when they went loose. However, in the film canon, it kind of seems to imply that he's at least somewhat good with spells. Because, well, he wasn't even given a chance to cast a spell. If he was, it probably would have worked if the pixie hadn't snatched it mid-incantation. The games, however, Lockhart is much more skilled with spells. He teaches the class a couple of spells in both his DADA class and the Dueling Club. More on that later. Anyway, in the books and the films, Lockhart presents Cornish pixies to the class, and he lets them out of the cage, where they kind of wreak havoc and cause chaos, and a lot of the class flees. And poor Neville ends up on a chandelier, but thankfully Hermione manages to swoop in and save the day. In the game, however, in addition to teaching the class about Cornish pixies, Lockhart actually demonstrates Immobulus, which is actually how to stop the pixies. And he kills it. However, he ends up tripping on the cage and accidentally releasing all of them at once, requiring you to stop all of them. Later, Lockhart hosts a dueling club where he gets schooled by Snape. In the book, he is brutalized. In the film, kind of so-so. However, in the game, before he's brutalized by Snape, he demonstrates training robots, and he manages to take them all down with disarming charms with ease, and Harry and Ron have to use the disarming charm to defeat all the training robots. During the third year, Harry and his friends were taught by Professor Lupin, objectively their best defense against the dark arts teacher. One of his most notable lessons involves boggarts, which are creatures that take the form of the worst fear of the person that looks at them. The boggart can be banished with the boggart banishing charm, Ridiculous, which Lupin also teaches in the class. Ridiculous is very useful because it can turn the boggart into something funny. So say for example your boggart is, well, Voldemort. Well, the boggart banishing charm can turn it into, like, say, Voldemort, a baby Voldemort in a pacifier. Not so scary anymore. Of course, the boggart will vary depending on the person. In addition to teaching the class about boggarts, Lupin also taught them about various dark creatures as well, like redcaps and hinkypunks. Redcaps being very, like, tribal creatures that will attack you if you come near. And a hinkypunk, despite what it may sound like, they're a type of magical beast that has one leg. And they appear as a form of blue, grey, or white smoke. Other things Lupin is taught about are kappas and grindylows, both water creatures. A kappa originates from Japan, while grindylows are a type of water demon. Lupin also has a live grindylow in his fish tank, as we see in the books. Grindylows aren't very dangerous alone, they can easily be dealt with. However, whenever there's multiple of them, that's when you gotta be careful. During this year, students may also learn about nocturnal beasts. Werewolves fit in this category, as Snape, when he was taking over for Lupin, taught the class about werewolves. In the books, he told the class to tell the difference between a wolf and a werewolf. In the films, it was instead an animagus and a werewolf. In the games, this entire class is cut entirely. Lupin was probably meant to teach this class as well, although I don't remember if we actually saw him teach it in the books. Vampires are also learned about during DADA in the third year. During the fourth year, Harry's defense against the dark arts teacher was Mad-Eye Moody, the Aura. Although later in the year we find out he is not quite who he says he is. Yeah, that's right, he was actually the Death Eater Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise. During Mad-Eye Moody / Barty Crouch Jr.'s time as DADA teacher, He taught the classes particular things that you're not actually meant to learn until later years. Specifically, in the books and the films, he taught them about the unforgivable curses, including Imperio, Crucio, and Avada Kedavra. Imperio is the mind control curse, which puts the victim under the person's control. Crucio is the Cruciatus curse, which tortures the victim with immense pain. While it hasn't been proven to kill, it can send the victim into permanent insanity. In the games, however, the Cruciatus curse is capable of killing. Avada Kedavra instantly kills the target. Although in the books, Mad-Eye Moody does explain that he was only allowed to teach them about counter curses during the 4th year. So it could be possible that that was what he was meant to teach, but instead he decided to up it to the unforgivables. In addition, in the books only, Mad-Eye Moody even places the class under the Imperious Curse, and they have to learn how to resist it. Unfortunately, only Harry is successful at resisting the Imperious Curse. This class, where he puts the class under the Imperious Curse, is cut from both the films and the games. In the game, however, instead of the unforgivable curses due to gameplay reasons, because only Dark Wizards can use them in the game, he instead teaches the class Reducto, which is an advanced spell the students aren't meant to learn until their 6th year. Obviously, as I explained earlier with charms, Reducto can be used to destroy objects that are normally unbreakable. So it can really help you out in certain situations. And I'm pretty sure it was a far cry away from the Unforgivable Curse class that we saw in the books and the films. During Harry and his friends' 5th year at Hogwarts, they did not learn any proper defense against dark arts. They had quite possibly their worst DADA teacher yet. Dolores Umbridge. Obviously, because of the Ministry's denial to accept the fact that Voldemort had returned, they appointed Dolores Umbridge as the DADA teacher. She refused to teach the class any defensive spells, rather just textbook theory. As a result, we don't really actually see any proper DADA for the 5th year. However, the first film, the Sorcerer's Stones film, actually does show a 5th year DADA class very briefly. We can actually see in this class Professor Quirrell teaching the 5th years about iguanas. He's holding an iguana in his class, which he's using to basically teach the class. I'm not sure what's so dangerous about iguanas, but Professor Quirrell was holding one. But then, immediately after McGonagall calls out Oliver Wood, Quirrell quickly jumps to a lecture about vampire bats, which are far more dangerous. Which would make more sense for 5th years. Obviously, a vampire bat is capable of sucking up blood. During the 5th year, students would have learned about counter curses and counter jinxes. However, Umbridge put a restriction on all those during Harry's time. Other things that are taught during the 5th year that Umbridge locked are the Hex Breaker and the Hex Zapper, which would have been very useful for preparing for Voldemort's return, if only that Toad Umbridge hadn't interfered. Honestly, she really is the worst. During the 6th year, Harry and his friends had Professor Snape as the DADA teacher. Snape's dream was to get the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, and, well, he finally got it. Dark creatures they learn about in the 6th year are far more dangerous than any of the other ones they've learned. Well, first of all, they learn about Inferi, which is a type of dark creature that emerges from the ground, the water below, and can actually strangle you. If you're pulled below the water and you get killed, you can actually become an Inferi. Sometimes when Voldemort kills someone, he reanimates their body to become an Inferi. You also learn about Dementors, very dangerous hooded, flying, soul-sucking creatures that freeze everything they come near, and they can suck the happiness from a person, forcing them to relive their worst enemy. Occasionally, if they get too close, they'll just pull down their hood, clamp their mouth to the victim's soul, and give them the Dementor's kiss, which sucks out their soul and leaves them in a permanent vegetative state, worse than dead. During Snape's time as DADA teacher, he taught them about the shield charm, which is very useful. However, Snape's teaching was a far cry to what students are more used to. Additionally, students in their 6th year will also learn non-verbal spells in DADH, just like charms and transfiguration. Although this isn't the case in the film canon as well as the games, because in the film canon students appear to already know it before their 6th year, and in the games, well, there's no dialogue, so students are already performing non-verbal spells from the start. You may also learn to resist the Imperious Curse during your 6th year as well, which Mad-Eye taught to students in their 4th year in the book canon. During Harry's 7th year, which he missed out on due to the Horcrux hunt, the Defense Against the Dark Arts became the Dark Arts, and it was taught by Death Eater Amicus Caro. Rather than teaching classes how to defend against dark spells, he actually taught classes to embrace and how to use them. And, well, he would punish students with said spells if they misbehaved. However, once Voldemort fell, the class changed back to Defense Against the Dark Arts, and a better teacher took the position instead. And from that point forward, every teacher could hold the position for longer than a year. Care of Magical Creatures. Care of Magical Creatures is one of the 5 electives students can take once they reach their 3rd year. 3 teachers have taught the position during Harry's time at Hogwarts. The first being Professor Kettleburn, which taught during Harry's first 2 years at Hogwarts. However, by the time Harry reached his 3rd year, Kettleburn had retired, and by then, Harry's familiar, Hagrid, took the position. Yes! Okay. Anyways, on a serious note, Hagrid taught the class about a couple of different creatures for 3rd years. One of the most notable was the Hippogriff. They're majestic creatures with the head of an eagle, they have majestic wings, and the body of a horse. Hippogriffs can actually fly, squawk, and attack if you're not careful. You have to bow to earn their respect. Harry learned this the right way, and he got a free ride across the Black Lake and all around Hogwarts. Best ride of his life, by the way. For a moment he felt free. Draco, on the other hand, he got jealous and thought it would be funny to call the Hippogriff a great ugly brute. Buckbeak didn't take too kindly to this, and boom! Malfoy was attacked. Of course, he tried to sue. Typical Malfoy behaviour. And almost got Buckbeak executed if it weren't for Harry and Hermione saving him through time travel. Other creatures Hagrid taught to the 3rd years are Flobberworms, which are very boring creatures that do basically nothing, except squirm around, I'm not really sure. And Salamanders. A salamander is, well, it's a magical fire-dwelling lizard. Basically, they feed on flames and can also melt snow. In the game, the Care of Magical Creatures class is very different. You have to provide Buckbeak with food. More specifically, 3 chicken legs before you get a chance to fly on him. During Care of Magical Creatures in the 4th year, students learned about 2 particular magical creatures. The Blast-Ended Screw-It was one of them. It was a type of crab that it was a type of species that Hagrid invented. A combination between the Manticore and the Fire Crab. Well, students had to figure out what they eat. Blast-Ended Screw-Its are capable of blasting fire at their targets. Blast-Ended Screw-Its were only seen in the books. They did not appear in the films or the games. However, they did appear in the DS version of the game, but not the main version. In the books, students also learn about unicorns during Care of Magical Creatures. During the 5th year, Professor Grubbly Plank temporarily took over the Care of Magical Creatures position, while Hagrid was on temporary leave, going to recruit the Giants for the Order, only for said mission to miserably fail. During 5th year, students learn about the Bowtruckle as well. The Bowtruckle, they are creatures that eat insects and they guard Wanwood, but do not get on their bad side because they might poke out your eyes. Newt Scamander was notable for being great friends with Bowtruckles. When Hagrid returned to the Care of Magical Creatures position after his exhibition in the books, Hagrid taught the class about Thestrals, which are winged black skeletal-like ghostly horses. I think that's the best way I can describe them. They're quite friendly, but people tend to avoid them because they're different. They're only visible to people who have seen death. meaning they've seen someone die. If you haven't seen death, they're basically invisible. Thestrals are the very thing that pull the carriages at the Hogwarts grounds. Harry and Luna can both see Thestrals, and after the battle of the Department of Mysteries in the film canon, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, and Neville can also see them. In the book canon, Neville could already see them at this point, prior to then. However, in the film canon, it's shown that he actually couldn't yet. In the films, as well as the games, this whole class with the Thestrals is cut. Instead, in the films, Luna explains to Harry what Thestrals are, and it kind of creates a bit of a bonding moment between the two. In the game, it's pretty much the same as the film. However, Harry and Luna team up to feed the 3 Thestrals fish. During the hours for 5th year, students learned about canals, which are hedgehog-like creatures, and during said lesson, they had to locate them among other hedgehogs, actual hedgehogs. They had to locate a canal among them. During the 5th year, students also studied Krups, which is a type of, wizard-bred dog. In addition to them, Porlocks were another creature that students learned about during their 5th year. They were tended to guard horses. During the 3rd year, students can also take Divination as one of the 5 electives. Of course, Divination is considered to be a mixed bag for most. Particularly Lavender Brown, Parvati Patil, and Padma Patil absolutely love this class. Whereas students like Hermione, they do not like it at all. Professor Trelawney is the teacher of this class, and her grandmother was a great seer. However, Trelawney herself is often assumed by many to be a fraud. 3rd years will learn about a few things in Divination. However, the thing they learn in the books, the films, and the games is Tessemosi, which is the art of reading tea leaves to predict future events. Of course, this is where Harry got his infamous grim prediction. Ron didn't really get a good one either, although his was average in comparison to Harry's, although thankfully Harry didn't die. Students may also learn about fire omens, which was another type of thing that 3rd years learned. And then there's palmistry, which is a type of divination where they involve interpreting the future through one's palm. Which sounds weird. Trelawney once tried to do this to Hermione, and well, this resulted in her walking out. Yeah, you show him, Hermione. And then there's crystal gazing, probably the most basic form of divination. It's a classic. It's where one looks into a crystal ball to gain insight on the future. Well, as Trelawney says, looking beyond. It's also where Harry got his very grim prediction about the eventual return of Voldemort's servants. As far as we know, in the 4th years, we only saw one divination class, and that was in the books. And all they learned there is astrology, where Trelawney basically uses astrology to predict the person's future. Of course, going on about grim things predicting the person's death. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, I thought so. 2 things are taught for 5th years in divination. Just like in the 4th year, students may learn about astrology again. However, another thing was also added to the curriculum for 5th years. Dream interpretation. Dream interpretation is basically the art of using one's dream to basically predict the future. During Harry's 5th year, which was during Umbridge's reign, Trelawney was temporarily fired. In the books, she was temporarily replaced with Ferenz, who was a different type of divination professor. His type of divination predicted events that were significant to mankind, rather than, well, ones based on the personal lives of other people. So he used centaur wisdom rather than regular wisdom. In the film canon, Ferenz never becomes the divination professor. In fact, Professor Dumbledore puts a stop to Umbridge's ridiculous plan from the beginning. As a result, Trelawney keeps her position. Granted, in the book canon, she returned to it once Umbridge was fired, and Trelawney and Ferenz became co-divination professors, who didn't really like each other very much. However, in the film canon, Trelawney remains the sole divination professor. Muggle Studies. Muggle Studies is another one of the 5 electives that students can take once they reach their 3rd year. During the books and the films, Harry never takes Muggle Studies, however Hermione does. Since the books are locked in on Harry's perspective, we never actually see a Muggle Studies class. However, I do have a few theories of what Muggle Studies could teach. We see the Muggle Studies classroom in the games, and they have a number of different Muggle objects, including lawnmowers, cars, computers, even a postbox. I would assume that they would probably use some of these to... Basically, you're probably supposed to guess what they do in the Muggle world, or you can basically imagine how they'd be used in a wizarding environment. Another theory I have is basically writing a report on a wizarding item on a Muggle newspaper. It would come as a bit of a shock for students that grew up in the wizarding world when they see the Muggle photos not moving, unlike the Daily Prophet, where the photos move. Another theory I have is, well, they basically put 2 boxes and you have to guess which ones are from the Muggle world and which are from the Wizarding world, and you have to sort them in each box accordingly, like putting the Muggle objects in one box or the Wizarding objects in another box. But obviously these are all just theories. We don't actually know for sure because we never actually see them in either the books or the films. An unknown teacher taught this class during Harry's 1st and 2nd years. During his 3rd and 4th year, another unknown teacher taught it. However, during the 5th year, Charity Burbage ended up teaching it. During Harry's 7th year, where he was away for the Horcrux hunt, Electo Caro taught Muggle Studies, and she basically filled them with lies and propaganda about Muggles, telling students that Muggles are basically no different to animals and should therefore be treated as such. After Voldemort's fall, a new Muggle Studies teacher was put in place, and he or she would have most definitely reverted it back to the original way. Study of Ancient Runes. Ancient Runes is another type of class where students have to learn to decode runes and determine what they mean. Ancient Runes is one of the 5 electives that students can take in their 3rd year. Hermione took this class in her 3rd year, however, because Harry didn't and the books are locked in on Harry's perspective, we never actually see an Ancient Runes class in the books or the films. However, in the games, Hermione does carry around a rune book, which she can use to decode rune cupboards and obtain the contents from inside. She carries this around from her 1st year. Each rune has a meaning and the students must work to decode them. If you have Hermione to help you, that's perfect. Otherwise, if you haven't really been studying, runes can be a very tricky subject. The Ancient Runes teacher was Professor Babbling, who we never actually see in the books. She may have made a possible appearance in the 1st film as one of the teachers at the High Table, but we're not really sure. Arithmancy. Arithmancy is basically the Wizarding world's version of maths. Arithmancy is one of the 5 electives students can take once they reach their 3rd year. We basically use mathematical equations to work out how certain forms of magic work. I have a theory it could also be used for a number of other forms of magic in the Wizarding world, such as astrology. Professor Vector was the Arithmancy teacher. During Harry's time at Hogwarts, he never took this class, and since the books are locked on Harry's perspective, we never actually see any Arithmancy classes. Professor Vector only appeared in the 1st film, and she was never seen in any of the books. Hermione took this class in her 3rd year, and this is actually one of her favourite subjects. However, Harry, on the other hand, thought Arithmancy looked terrible. Astronomy. Astronomy is a very interesting Hogwarts subject. It's basically using magic and science to understand the stars and movements of other planets. The teacher of astronomy is Professor Sinistra. During the 1st year, students will be required to draw up a map of Jupiter, as well as its moons, probably. However, during the 3rd year, well, students had to map up a star chart, which seems to indicate that they study stars in that year. During the 5th year, well, students had to draw up moons of all of Jupiter's planets and possibly other planets as well. While we don't see any astronomy classes in the films, Professor Sinistra does appear in the first film, and she's also a playable character in the game as well. History of Magic. History of Magic is the class that basically tells you all about the history of the Wizarding World, including certain historical figures, historical events, as well as historical landmarks in the Wizarding World. The History of Magic class is taught by the ghostly teacher Professor Binns, who died while teaching a class, but came back as a ghost and continued teaching it. He's very sleepy and forgetful, and his classes are often known to be very, very boring. We never actually see a History of Magic class in the films, it's only just mentioned. Meanwhile, Binns most likely doesn't appear in the films, although it is possible that the ghost we saw in the 3rd film, which Dean Thomas ran into in the Gryffindor common room, could have been Professor Binns, although this was never confirmed. In the game's History of Magic also doesn't appear, however Professor Binns does appear in the game as a playable character. During History of Magic in the first year, students will learn about the Werewolf Code of Conduct, which was a ministry law that failed, requiring all werewolves to sign their names, promising they won't hurt anyone when they become a werewolf, but rather to lock themselves up. But obviously this led to discrimination, so no one signed it. There's also the self-stirring cauldron, which students learned about during History of Magic, which may not sound like much, but was very revolutionary for the time because it, well, stirred things by itself. Students would also learn about historical figures such as Emmerich the Evil, Uric the Oddball, and Elfric the Eager. During 2nd year, students will learn about the Medieval Assembly of European Wizards, and the other event, which is the International Warlock Convention of 1289. These were very crucial events during the history of the Wizarding World. Also during the 2nd year is where Professor Binns tells the story of the 4 founders of Hogwarts in the books. In the films, this was instead told by Professor McGonagall during a Transfiguration class. During the 3rd year, students will learn about witch hunts, which is in line with the Salem witch trials. However, it wasn't the Salem witch trials actually. It was actually during the 14th century where they hunted for witches and wizards and basically killed them. During the 4th year, students would learn about the Goblin Rebellions, which were when goblins pretty much rebelled against wizard kind due to the discrimination they received from wizards, such as not being allowed to own wands. During the 5th year, students would learn about giant wars, which were wars between wizards and giants, because, well, obviously giants are known to hate humans. Additionally, students would also learn about the Statute of Secrecy, which was the law to keep the Wizarding World hidden from Muggles. This law was designed to protect Muggles, however, it also caused some discrimination against them. Students would also continue learning about the Goblin Rebellions during their 5th year as well. Apparition. Apparition is a class taught to students in their 6th year. It's another elective class that is entirely optional for students to take, however the ability of Apparition is very useful, especially when you want to travel from one place to another. The class is taught by Professor Twycross. During the class, the Great Hall is basically reassembled, and students can practice their Apparition skills by disapparating and trying to apparate in the center of one of the circles. Students have to remember the 3 Ds: destination, determination, and deliberation. Apparition sounds simple and really cool, especially being able to teleport from one place to another. But you have to be very careful to remain focused, because if you get apparition wrong, you can get splinched. Splinching is when you leave a part of your body behind. It's very rare, but it's not unheard of. Sometimes you can only just lose like a minor part of your body, like say an eyebrow or a knee bone or something like that. But then in some cases it can be something extreme like an arm. Let's just say the sight of getting splinched is not a pleasant one. Thankfully, splinching is reversible and it's easy to reattach a body part once it's splinched. Apparition classes were only seen in the books, they were not shown in the films, however they still most likely happened because Harry and his friends are shown to be able to apparate in the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, so they most likely happen off screen. In the games, you don't actually learn the ability until the Deathly Hallows Part 1 chapter. Apparition overall is very useful, trying to get from one location to another very quickly. Of course, one has to remember the 3 Ds, destination, determination, and deliberation. Master these and, well, success is yours. But anyway, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below which classes you liked, which classes you don't like, and your favorite professors. I'll see you next time.